1994, Rwanda experienced one of the darkest chapters in modern African history. Over 800,000 people were killed in just 100 days, while as many as 2 million others fled the country amid ethnic violence targeting members of the Tutsi community and moderate Hutu. Few would have imagined that just 3 decades later, the country will be positioning itself as a technology, finance, and conference hub for the continent. For years, Rwanda's future appeared uncertain, but over the past 3 decades, the country has pursued one of the most ambitious rebuilding projects in modern Africa. Today, Rwanda is attempting a dramatic economic transformation. From new multipurpose dams to a proposed billion-dollar airport, the country is building at remarkable speed. Africa's first green city is now in the works, while cranes continue to reshape Kigali's skyline. In 2026, the IMF ranked Rwanda among the fastest growing economies in Africa. For a country of just 14 million people, the scale of this transformation is staggering. In little more than a decade, the size of the economy has effectively doubled. This growth has not happened by accident. It has been driven by an aggressive push into high-value services, major infrastructure projects, and a long-term ambition to turn Rwanda into a regional hub for trade, technology, and global investment. This small mountainous nation in the heart of East Africa is now attracting the attention of global investors. Despite covering just 26,000 square kilometers, it sits strategically between the East African community and the Congo Basin. In 2023, Rwanda hosted more than 2,000 delegates for the 73rd FIFA Congress. In 2024, the FIA, the global governing body of motorsports, held its General Assembly and prize-giving ceremony in Kigali at the BK Arena. Then in 2025, Kigali hosted the Global AI Summit on Africa. That same month, it also welcomed the annual conference of the African Private Capital Association. Add to that the UCI Road World Championships, the Inclusive FinTech Forum, the International Conference on Green Sustainable Development, and the Giants of Africa Festival, and a clear pattern begins to emerge. Rwanda is deliberately positioning itself as a preferred destination for high-value business summits, investment forums, and global sporting events. Clearly, something is happening and the world is paying attention. But to truly understand Rwanda's transformation, it is important to understand the country's long-term game plan. In the year 2000, Paul Kagame was elected president by Rwanda's Transitional National Assembly following the resignation of his predecessor, Pastor Bizimungu. Kagame had already served as vice president and minister of defense since 1994, when the genocide against the Tutsi left more than 800,000 people dead and displaced millions more. Rwanda emerged from the tragedy with shattered institutions, devastated infrastructure, and an economy in ruins. The new government now faced the enormous challenge of rebuilding an entire nation almost from scratch. The government would later publish an ambitious economic blueprint known as Vision 2020, a national development strategy that outlined both Rwanda's post-genocide realities and its long-term ambitions. The plan was built around 6 major pillars, including good governance, skilled human capital, a vibrant private sector, modernized agriculture, world-class physical infrastructure, and regional integration. Vision 2020 placed strong emphasis on improving living standards through measurable socio-economic targets. These included reducing infant mortality, increasing access to secondary and tertiary education, improving agricultural productivity, and transforming Rwanda into a knowledge-based economy. At the turn of the millennium, Rwanda remained one of the poorest countries in the world. Life expectancy stood at just 49 years, while GDP per capita was approximately $225. 2 decades later, Rwanda had made significant progress towards many of those goals. Poverty rates had fallen dramatically from an estimated 78% in 1994 to 38% by 2017. Electricity access, once below 10% of the population, had expanded to more than 60%, while GDP per capita had risen more than threefold. The transformation was not just visible in economic statistics, it could be seen in new roads, expanding cities, rising school enrollment, growing digital infrastructure, and a government increasingly focused on positioning Rwanda as a modern services and technology-driven economy. But what exactly is powering Rwanda's rise? To To answer that question, it's important to understand how the structure of the Rwandan economy itself has changed over the last 2 decades. Agriculture remains the backbone of employment in Rwanda and still supports the livelihoods of most of the population. But its contribution to GDP has gradually declined over time, falling from 26% in 2017 to 20% in 2025, according to Rwanda's National Institute of Statistics. This decline does not necessarily mean agriculture is becoming less important. Rather, it reflects the country's broader push towards industrialization, urbanization, and higher value economic activity. Industry now makes up roughly 22% of Rwanda's economy. This includes construction, mining, manufacturing, and large-scale infrastructure development. Across Kigali, cranes dominate the skyline as new roads, convention centers, industrial parks, and residential developments continue to reshape the capital. Rwanda has also aggressively promoted its Made in Rwanda initiative in an attempt to reduce imports and stimulate local manufacturing. In 2018, Volkswagen began vehicle assembly operations in Rwanda with a planned annual production capacity of 5,000 vehicles. Mining has also become increasingly important to Rwanda's economy. The country exports minerals such as tantalum, tin, and tungsten, which are key materials used in smartphones, laptops, and electric vehicles. By 2025, mineral exports had become Rwanda's second largest source of foreign exchange after tourism. But the biggest story lies in the rise of the services sector. By 2025, services accounted for roughly 52% of Rwanda's GDP, up from 48% in 2017. Much of this growth has been driven by deliberate government strategy. Rather than competing through large-scale manufacturing or natural resource exports alone, Rwanda has increasingly positioned itself as a hub for tourism, conferences, aviation, finance, logistics, and technology-enabled services. The country has invested heavily in branding itself as a premium ecotourism destination and one of Africa's leading centers for international meetings, conferences, and exhibitions. Kigali now regularly hosts high-profile global events ranging from AI summits to international sporting conferences and investment forums. Aviation has also become a major pillar of Rwanda's services strategy. The government has aggressively backed Rwanda Air as part of its ambition to transform Kigali into a regional transport and logistics hub. The airline surpassed 1 million passengers in the 2023-2024 financial year and aims to double that figure by 2029. In light of this success, Rwanda is now doubling down on the services sector and its young population as central pillars of its Vision 2050 strategy. Rwanda Air sits at the center of that ambition. In May 2026, the national carrier added 2 Boeing 737-800 aircrafts as part of a 5-year plan to double its fleet size by 2029. The government hopes to transform Kigali into a regional aviation and logistics hub, linking East Africa to the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. In 2019, Rwanda signed a major agreement with Qatar Airways to invest in the construction of the new Bugesera International Airport, a project valued at roughly $1.3 billion. Though the project has experienced delays, Rwanda Air and Qatar Airways have continued deepening their aviation partnership through code-share agreements and direct flights between Kigali and Doha. Once completed, the airport is expected to handle up to 7 million passengers annually, with future expansion phases already being discussed. But Rwanda's ambitions extend far beyond aviation. The country is also making aggressive investments in digital infrastructure and technology-enabled services as it attempts to transition toward a knowledge-based economy. Rwanda is currently piloting a national digital ID system with more than 1.5 billion people already registered according to the National Identification Agency. The government has also launched a broader digital public infrastructure strategy aimed at reducing transaction costs, improving tax collection, supporting fintech growth, and attracting foreign investment. One of the clearest symbols of Rwanda's long-term ambitions is Kigali Innovation City. This flagship mixed-use development sits just outside Kigali and is designed to bring together universities, technology companies, startup incubators, and venture capital. Rwanda is effectively betting that its future competitiveness will come not from scale or natural resources, but from innovation, connectivity, human capital, and high-value services. Under Vision 2050, Rwanda is not only attempting to transform its economy, it is also trying to reshape the physical structure of the country itself. The country is banking big on urbanization. The government aims to expand access to formal housing across all segments of the population, while reducing over-reliance on Kigali by developing 6 secondary cities as regional economic hubs. Through its national urbanization policy, Rwanda plans to increase the country's urban population from roughly 28% today to more than 52% by 2035 and eventually 70% by 2050. Policymakers believe this transition could fundamentally reshape the country's social, economic, and political geography. But the scale of the challenge is enormous. Rapid urbanization will require massive investment in housing, transport systems, utilities, healthcare, and other social infrastructure. To support this transition, Rwanda has developed a series of long-term planning frameworks, including the National Land Use and Development Master Plan, the National Land Policy, and updated master plans for Kigali and the country's 6 satellite cities. The government is particularly focused on densification, encouraging vertical and compact urban development in an effort to improve land use efficiency and limit uncontrolled urban sprawl. The final piece of Rwanda's long-term strategy may also be its most important resource, its young population. With a median age of just around 20 years, Rwanda sees human capital as central to its Vision 2050 ambitions. The country aims to achieve universal access to high-quality education and universal healthcare by 2050, while transforming its workforce for higher productivity and participation in a modern services economy. Rwanda is working with international universities and institutions to strengthen local expertise in technology, engineering, and innovation. At the same time, the government is investing in coding, data science, and digital skills training as it prepares young people for emerging industries such as BPO, fintech, and software development. In many ways, Rwanda is betting that its future competitiveness will depend less on natural resources and more on the skills, adaptability, and productivity of its people. Rwanda's economic transformation has not come without criticism. The ruling Rwanda Patriotic Front has long faced accusations of constraining political opposition, limiting press freedoms, and narrowing the space for civil society. Critics also argue that much of the country's economic progress remains heavily state-driven, with the domestic private sector still relatively underdeveloped. Rwanda's public debt has also risen significantly over the past decade as the country poured resources into infrastructure, aviation, tourism, and urban development. Supporters argue that these investments are necessary for long-term growth, while critics question whether some large-scale projects will generate sufficient economic returns. And despite the gleaming skyline of Kigali and the country's growing reputation as a hub for technology and international conferences, a large share of the population still depends on agriculture, highlighting the scale of the transformation the country is attempting to achieve under Vision 2050. Rwanda's relationship with its western neighbor, the DRC, also remains a persistent source of tension. The DRC, alongside some Western governments and UN experts, have accused Rwanda of supporting the M23 rebel group operating in eastern Congo, allegations Kigali denies. Regardless, the accusations pose a reputational challenge for a country that has invested heavily in projecting an image of stability, competence, and modernization. Rwanda's story is far from over. The vision is ambitious, the state machinery is disciplined, and the political will to pursue long-term transformation is clearly there. This small, landlocked country, comparable in size to Israel, is attempting one of the boldest economic experiments on the African continent. Whether Rwanda ultimately succeeds or falls short, its transformation is becoming increasingly difficult for the world to ignore. And personally, I'm here for it. If you enjoy stories about African markets, businesses, and the economic forces shaping the continent, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next story.